you're a bit numb to it. It doesn't feel real. You kind of feel like you're waiting to wake up from a nightmare, because it's one of those things that you hear happening to other people, but you don't ever assume it's going to happen to you. And then, yeah, of course, it slowly dawns on you and starts to sink in the magnitude of the situation. And during the day, it was okay because you can distract yourself with the other people that were in the room, and you try and want to keep them positive, because I already felt guilty for what I was putting everyone through, especially my family. So you're trying to pretend you're fine, and you almost embody that, and you do feel fine. But then at night, when you're left with your own thoughts, and it was dark because I couldn't move a thing, and I couldn't even cough for myself properly. So I was lying on my back. So when any saliva went down my throat, I couldn't clear it. So it felt like I was drowning over and over again. So I had to learn to breathe through my nose and meditate. And of course, I couldn't move, so I couldn't press the buzzer for the staff and couldn't shout. So you just had to wait until someone came in and realized you were choking next door. So that was like torture in itself. And then you're being bed bathed. You can't go to the toilet for yourself. All of those sorts of things. So there's a loss of identity there, and a big ego hit, I suppose, from being very self-reliant and being known for being physical and help other people out. And you're all of a sudden everyone's doing everything for you. So there were some dark moments in those early days, but then as soon as I saw any progress with it, like the toe wiggling and seeing there was something to work towards, I just latched onto that as a distraction almost, and then just spent every day trying to do something that would improve my current situation. And I quickly realized that the only way to get better was to stay present, because I couldn't affect the outcome if I was just worrying about where I was going to end up in the future, or what I could have done differently to not dive in the pool, like living in regret and living in the past. And that was where I was, to answer your question to start with. I was, feeling sorry for myself, really, victim mindset. Why me? And it wasn't until I moved to the spinal unit after 12 weeks. No, how long was it? 7 or 8 weeks. I moved to the spinal unit, and I'd been sort of in a side room in my own bubble. And then all of a sudden you're on a ward with 30, 40 other people with varying levels of injury, some of whom are better off than you, but a lot of whom aren't. And some have permanent tracheotomies in, they're going to have full-time care for the rest of their life. They've got complete injuries, no scope for recovery. And all of a sudden you're like, hang on a minute, I've got an actual opportunity to get a little bit better here. These people don't. What right have I got to feel hard done by this situation? And I knew how lucky I was to still be alive. And then just by focusing on that, and just focusing on what I could do each day, and being grateful, having that gratitude for having the opportunity to even work towards something, no matter how uncertain the outcome was, helped me to stay in a more positive mindset. And don't get me wrong, it's a work in progress, and it always is. Like, it's your brain will naturally gravitate towards the negative. That's how we're wired up biologically. But being able to practice those things and remember and reflect and interact with people who aren't necessarily in as good a place as you, or have the opportunities that you've got, really helped with my own recovery.
That mindfulness piece and the bit of, again, the perspective, the gratitude, the mindfulness, was that something that you had done prior to the accident, or was this something that you were almost like learning on the job and thinking, I've got to figure this out, and then recognize that it had an impact? Or was it something you already pre-knew?
No, it was completely learning on the job. You do a certain amount with sport in terms of sports psychology, but that's all about on-field stuff. It's about focus and bouncing back. It's not about mindfulness and things like that. I suppose they do a little bit more now, but it was a proper crash course in all of those things. And it was just survival mechanism. And it's amazing how many of them come instinctively to you as a human being. And I thought I was sort of working all these things out myself. And then since that, I became fascinated in that side of things and the psychology behind it. And you realize that they're all researched, pre-existing models and techniques that I was just working out naturally. So that was quite interesting for me. That has been interesting for me since. And I know the title of my book's Lucky, and that was because in the blogs I was keeping, the diaries I was keeping throughout hospital, the publisher literally said to me, you used the word lucky 42 times in your first 100 days. Do you not think that's a bit weird, considering you just broke your neck? And I was like, yeah, that is. Like, why is that? And like digging into it, that reframing element as a coping mechanism, that perspective shift, because your brain knows if it stays in the negative, then you're going to be hampering your chances of making a physical recovery because of that mind body connection as well. So I was naturally reframing it. I was always looking at the positive side, but only because I think is a survival technique. But then if you do that enough over a long enough period, it becomes innate. And to the point now where my wife despairs of me being constantly positive and reframing things all the time, but I catch myself doing it. I'm like, even if someone's cutting you up in the car, you're like, oh, well, they must be having a bad day. At least it's a chance for me to work on my, self-control. Like, how is there anything good about that?